All right, welcome to another week of Office Hours with Arbitrage. I think this is season 2, episode 4. Got Quantverse today on deck. Thanks, Quantverse. Really
Hello.
appreciate you stopping by. Quantverse, thanks again for joining. Are you ready to?
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I'm ready.
You ready? Cool, cool. So, Quantverse, where do you live?
So I live in Prague, which is the capital of Czech Republic. It's a small country in Central Europe. So it's already like 10 p.m. now here, actually.
Okay, not too late for you then. That's good.
Yeah, it's perfect time for me.
Yeah. Quantverse, what do you do for a living?
Well, I don't really have regular job. For now, I mostly live from Numerai AI, actually. But I dedicate to more projects. One is designing automated trading systems for cryptocurrency markets and market
What?
making.
That's amazing.
Well, actually, it's like still like experimental because I'm still like fine-tuning the strategies, so it's not really live yet. But hopefully, it will be live like in like 2 months, probably, like for some tests.
It's awesome.
Before I was actually doing like arbitrage strategies, are not intended. Yeah, and it was working fine in a time of really high volatility, but in the case of low volatility is not really that interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, so and only if there are like big moves at Bitcoin, you really gain something. So I think more interesting is to focus on just market making, like with a single leg system. Well, then other project I have is a small website called Pair Trading Lab, which is just a bunch of tools to play with equity pairs trading, uh, either doing like analysis of pairs. You can also assemble your portfolio of pair strategies, and you can even there is some really simple automated platform available for you to download that you can execute your strategies in real time. If you have an interactive brokers account, you can really let it go, and it will automatically trade your pairs based on your rules. It's like
neat.
a kind of smaller website, but it still have some customers who like it. There was even small hedge fund actually using that in the history. So well, if you are bored, you can take a look.
Post it
But
in the Zoom chat so people can check it out. If you,
yeah, sure.
post it in Zoom chat, um, and I'll buy you some time because I can't multitask. So if somebody asked me to write in chat and talk at the same time, it would just be a mess. So I'll just filibuster for you, no problem. Um, so you're in Prague and you write these really cool algorithms for market making, and you're going to make them go live soon. So now I can hit you with the next question.
Yeah,
How would your parents describe what you do for a living?
yeah, that's a good question. They basically know I'm doing projects related to Bitcoin. They kind of know what Bitcoin is already. They think I work for some weird American hedge fund, actually. It was really difficult to explain how the whole Numerai project actually works. So they just think I'm like an employee, probably, as a contractor. And yeah, they know I'm just doing some stuff related to like brokers and exchange. I try to do some money, like to gain some money there in the markets, but they don't really know like the details what I do, probably. But I think it's enough like for them that they like grasp the principle what I'm doing.
That's
So
really
they
cool.
think I work for American company.
Sure. An anonymous crypto
Yeah.
project thing. Um, I think it's great that your primary activity is derived from the tournament. That's amazing. I think there's probably several people in here who are striving to achieve that level. Um, it's glad to hear that somebody's able to pull it off. So thanks for sharing that. Quanverse, what do you do for fun? Can't just code all the time.
I also sometimes I dedicate to some like photography, but
Oh, cool.
yeah, I also have like a few cameras and many lenses. But like lately, I found out it's more fun to actually downgrade back to the film. So I have also like film cameras, and I also try to like develop like black and white photos myself.
Nice.
It's like because if you know there's like some considerable cost to each frame you make, it forces you to like think about different way about what and how do you really how you compose and what do you actually like make photos of. So that's one hobby, and the other hobby is I'm actually salsa DJ and a salsa
Oh,
dancer. If you know like salsa, like Latin dancing.
you
So
do,
yeah,
wait, you do Southside Latin dancing DJ music?
yeah,
And you're in Prague?
yeah. There is a like big scene actually, like community
That's
of
so
dancers.
cool.
It's fun,
I'm
and we
being,
also like
I'm 50
go.
miles from Miami, so I kind of, that's a little like, are you
Yeah,
serious, bro? But okay, man, that's really cool. I like it.
yeah.
What else
So
were you gonna
this,
say?
yeah. So this like the salsa DJing and salsa dancing is probably the biggest hobby, and the photography as well, and stuff like traveling also.
Yeah, when we can
That's
travel
just
again,
that's
right?
boring. Yeah, we already can, but just only within the Europe.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Uh, let's talk a bit about the tournament. When did you start participating? How old's your account?
I started submitting in January 2017.
Okay, so after the
First, just
initial first
under,
wave.
yeah. So it was still the like old competition format that your performance was not evaluated on live data, but on some like private holdout set.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's how it started, like in January. I was just curious about uh, actually I wanted to learn Python back then. Before I didn't use it, and to get more experience with machine learning. And I thought that just doing some synthetic project or some like tutorials, it's not really that interesting. So I wanted some like motivation, like to compete with somebody, and maybe perhaps if I'm lucky to already gain some Bitcoin back then it was. Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, so actually I learned some Python and some machine learning just on this competition only.
That's very interesting how many of us turned to the tournament as a method of learning,
Hmm.
and then ended up being able to turn it into some profit. I think that's a wonderful part of this whole project. Um, what do you? Oh, how did you find out about Numerai in the first place?
Well, because I was already interested in some like quantitative finance blogs and some social networks because I had that website, and somebody just shared it. That's different, something different, like some interesting combination of machine learning, quantitative tradings, and cryptocurrency because it paid in Bitcoin.
Hmm.
So it caught my attention, and in a few months after I just knew it, I started to like dedicate it some time to that and submitting first predictions. So I actually found out about Numerai AI like in the second half of 2016, something like that. And in January 2017, I started to build some model.
So, what do you wish you had known when you started out?
Good question. Probably I wish I had known about Numerai and about its prices back in time, so I can precisely time some decisions. That's
Oh,
probably like
feels
that
bad,
will be
man.
the most interesting information to have. And when we talk about the modeling part itself, I wish somebody told me like using the official validation set for actual validation and for actually choosing of my models. It's not really good idea. It's just too small to give you any insight about your model, basically.
Yeah, and Quantverse, something that I hear often, since I talk to a lot of new users and I get a lot of questions on it, they believe the tournament's so challenging that it becomes overwhelming and it's too much to handle. There's like far too much information, there's too much stuff going on. But why do you think people believe that?
A good question. I don't think it's that overwhelming, like by itself. Well, anybody can just take the example model and try to make something better. But maybe people mean something else, and that's that the competition is changing. Like every 6 months is almost different competition. So maybe some people were maybe just tired of some changes, but it's hard to guess because I don't really share that opinion myself.
Likewise, I would
So
imagine you brought that up and it made me think about it. If I started the tournament and then 2 weeks later it was a breaking change, like I
yeah,
just throw up my hands and I'd probably walk away too, because
yeah.
sometimes those changes are very large. Thankfully, they haven't been. I think, Anson, aren't we coming up on the 1 year anniversary of Kazutsugi very soon?
Almost. I think we're like 2 months away, 3 months
Oh,
away.
okay.
Yeah.
You at least announced it this time last year, if I remember correctly. So, um,
Right.
yeah, and then there was work leading up to even launching. So I would say it's an 18-month development process with iterations on it live. So, I think this is the most stable that we've seen it. What has changed, of course, is that binary outcome, right? Where you have a full loss if you burn. That has, to me, this has been the most welcome change because it's given a lot of stability and a lot of confidence in my modeling. When you have a 100% burn, it really hurts. And when it strings together like that, the risk of ruin is very high. So it was a welcome change. So that
I
it's
still
interesting you
remember.
brought that up. Say
I
again?
still remember when Kazutsuki was introduced. I was not really initially happy about it because I had to like switch my modeling from classification to regression, make a lot of changes and stuff. But now, like after almost 1 year, I can say it's like the best change which happened to the competition because this data set
Definitely.
is much more stable to model.
Definitely.
So I'm happy we have Kazutsuki actually.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. I totally agree. Um, what programming language do you use and why? I mean, you mentioned Python for the tournament, but what about in general?
Yeah, in general, for other projects I dedicate now, I use Rust for almost everything now because these projects are like performance sensitive. Like you can imagine, for instance, like the market making system needs to really run fast with a low latency. I also really built like simple backtester for that, and I just need to like run it on really like low level quote data from Bitmax, for instance. I really needed to run as fast as possible. So I just wanted to have something which is really fast, has some memory safety, some good concurrency, and some language which doesn't really have garbage collector. So, for instance, not Java, not really .NET, and also I am working on one big project with some friends. Actually, last time you mentioned there was a time in history you mined Bitcoin at Slash Pool.
Yes, I
Am,
did.
am I right? Okay,
Yep.
so by coincidence, owners of Slushpool are my friends actually, and I'm
Really? That's
working
so
together
cool.
with them on some projects. And now the whole company actually uses Rust for everything. So this
You
is
think they can
also
help
the
me look up
reason.
my old Slush account and see if I have any Bitcoin in there?
Probably yes, yeah. Just drop your handle to chat, and I will ask.
Dude, this has been 7 years ago. I have
Yeah,
no idea what it is.
yeah. So my good friends are owners of this Slushpool actually.
It's amazing. How cool. Um, I just remember back in the day, like trying to figure out how to pull this off. and I stumbled into Slushpool, and you could, in the reading of like the website and the project, you could tell that it was like real people. You know what I mean? Like there was a sense of like, this isn't just some janky project. Like these are people really trying to make this work, and I'm all about that. Like, and I think Numerai is kind of the same thing. It's real people trying to build the thing, and that community really has a lot of stickiness, and it helps a lot. So pass that on to your friends and tell them to keep up the humanity of it, because a lot of this stuff gets disconnected with computer science. No, that's really cool. So back to the tournament, because I don't want to sidebar into crypto too far, even though we're all clearly very interested in it. Can you give us your top 3 tips for the tournament, please?
Okay, so I guess first tip, I already kind of mentioned it, will be to bring some proper, reliable validation scheme. So you can somehow evaluate your models locally with some confidence. That means run cross-validation basically, or you can perhaps bring some like work-forward validation, something like this. But definitely, like evaluating on a validation set is not really enough. It doesn't tell you basically anything. Well, if you have bad results on validation set, your model, I think, most likely sucks. But if the results are okay, it doesn't tell you anything. Yeah, it's because the data is not IID here, so you have to.
True.
It's not really enough. There's only one regime there, and
well,
that's
can I ask you a question on that, since we're still on this cross validation?
Yeah, sure.
Have you looked at Val 1 and Val 2? So I would agree with you in the previous validation where it was just validation 1. That didn't seem to be very representative. With the addition of validation 2, do you still stand by that statement that the validation set is not enough if you were to combine Val 1
I do.
and 2? It's still not enough.
Yeah, because, well, I do cross validation. That's my like primary source of truth, and I use validation 1 and 2 like for like additional holdout set, just to take a peek if it kind of matches the performance. And I already can see I have many models which have good results in validation 1 or 2, but they fail like in cross validation actually. So for me, in order to use any model, it has to have good performance on both, like cross validation, Val 1 and Val 2.
Are you concerned that then you don't have enough training data though?
Well, I thought that initially, but I actually tried some experiment. I trained only on the first half of training data, and the performance of the second half and validation set is still like okay. I was able to find models doing good on the rest of the data, only seeing the first half of the training set. So I think there's plenty of data.
Okay. I asked because for my own uses, I don't find that if I subset it too much that it's enough to train on. I get concerned about it.
You'd have the same amount of training data if you do k-fold cross-validation, right?
Yeah, I usually like take like 3 folds of cross validation, so there is like enough data.
Yeah, so one model's validation set is another model's train set. So I mean, so it's fine if you're doing k-fold.
Oh, I see what you're saying, JRB. Yeah, that makes sense. No, that's fine. It depends on the model too. I consider the fact that in an error there's 5,000 observations, right? So I want to have enough total. I look at it in terms of errors. I want enough errors to be able to kind of model on it.
So I've got a question for Quantverse. So do you end up like ensembling the results of your k-fold cross validation, or you just pick the best one?
That's a good question.
I do.
You don't have to answer that, by the way.
Yeah, no problem. I just average them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Quantverse, I imagine that's why we kind of huddle together in scores sometimes, because I'm doing that in some of my stuff. But that okay. So we've sidebarred huge on your first tip, which is on cross validation. What's your second one?
Yeah. Second one could be, this is mostly for people who start in the competition. Because if you, for instance, look at the example predictions, like integration test, you can notice it's quite a good model, actually. It's usually like 35 in rank.
Very
So
hard to beat.
maybe, yeah, so maybe the good idea actually it's for people who start the competition just to take this model, look at it, try to understand how it works and why, and try to beat it actually. Yeah, try to take it like a baseline to beat, because then if you beat it just one rank, you are 34, so 34 or 33.
Yeah.
So that's probably a tip for people who want to restart with the competition. So I don't think you need to really start right away with some obscure neural network architectures. You can just try to beat this model first, and then you can just make it like more shifted towards MMC or what you wish. But it's a good start to actually beat this model. So that's probably the tip number 2. But it's mostly for people who are just about to start.
I think some people who are struggling, even after a period of participation, would benefit from doing that too. You know, really go into the weeds and figure out what's going on. I've been working on that for the past 2 weeks, trying to, before I start teaching people how to evaluate the model, to make sure that I really understood this stuff. And because I've been in the tournament so long, and you may also agree, you kind of take things for granted. And so I've taught some of my friends how to begin participating, and they'll ask me a question that to them is like really hard, this thing that they can't even fathom. And it's something that I haven't even considered in 2 years. And this happens all the time and with different friends. And so I'm having to go back and like really get into the very, very basics of it. And I would say, like I said, it's helpful even for people who've been around a long time. Just go back and figure it out.
You can, for instance,
Can
notice.
you score it on? How can you see that as a positive? Maybe the score that you see is a negative. Can you, like you said, can you beat it? And then on what metric are you beating it? Is it just reputation?
Yeah.
Maybe there's something else you want to throw in, like with Richard's suggestion for stationarity. You know, all those things matter. And I think if you try to look at the example predictions on all the different metrics and try to beat it on just one metric or 2 of them, yeah, you're well on your way to a very performant model. I completely agree with
Yeah, I think this is the most like quick way to get some model which actually works well for you.
Yeah. What's your third tip, my friend?
My third tip, probably it would be like to look at this competition, or to look at the models you want to build, like a multi-objective optimization problem that you actually, you can, like, if you take a look to this forum, there's a lot of advices like to optimize for Sharper ratio or optimize for Sortino ratio. And I think in reality, you want to optimize on more dimensions like this. You, for instance, want to optimize for also for certain low feature exposure, or to lower correlation with the example predictions, for instance, at the same time. So you
Right.
can really try to look at how actually multiple objective algorithm works, and try to, for instance, when you search like your hyperparameter space, try to do it in the way that your models are improving in all dimensions, not only in the performance one, for instance, because you will find a lot of really interesting models that way.
Definitely. And you'll find some interesting things that maybe you didn't consider before. Like I said, I've been tinkering in the background to get ready to make some training videos that have been requested. And I don't like teaching things that I don't really understand myself. Like I don't know how many of you have taught before, but when you get up there in front of the whiteboard, it's you and your brain, and you don't get to Google and check and see what the students are asking, and you'd be surprised how they connect dots that don't make any sense to you. Like they'll pull something from biology and ask about portfolio theory, and you're like, oh shit, you know, you got to come up with an answer really quick. And so the best thing that you can do is to prepare. John probably does it live because he's got this stuff down cold. I'm sure of that. But for me, I need a lot of prep. So
I always get those random questions during math class. It's always good to get one of those random questions. Where did COVID come from? You know?
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know. I don't know what to tell you kids.
What stock should I buy if Boeing isn't selling planes? What? You know, you have to like really get in, you know, it's just so interesting. Yeah, anyway. So thank you for giving us your tips, Quantverse. I think it's great. There's a fun one that I asked John last week, and you saw it in his summary if you read it. But if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be? And why do you say that?
Good question. Funny one. Well, probably it would be something funny, like maybe some kind of meme. Probably something, I don't know, some meme with Mr. Yoda telling you, if you are already tired of going to church, join us Jedi, or something like that. You know, or something like, if you know, for instance, you know Samuel Jackson from the actor from Pulp Fiction. Yeah, so maybe like this guy saying like, drive safe, motherfucker.
That's so funny. Here's a controversial question that, you know, I just love asking this. This is always fun. Who's your favorite team member?
That's a tough question. But I think I vote for Anson actually, because I met him already like in person in Prague.
Right. Yeah.
Like introduce all the Czech food.
Rigged.
Yeah, so probably Anson. Yeah, it's Anson.
Yeah, he's a cool dude. I'll vouch for him. Cool.
Thanks.
Anson, what's your tally for the second season here? I think you got at least 2, right?
Not sure. I think 2. Season 2 has been a little bit more. The votes have been spread out more, I think.
It's quite a bit of variance. That's true.
Yeah.
I think it's good. You got to spread the love, folks. Spread the love. But thankfully, there's not that many team members, so there will be a winner. What is your #1 feature request or improvement for the tournament?
I think right now I would really like to have some single page where I can evaluate the daily performance of my models like at once. So because right now I have to like switch between models or just type the URL from bookmark, and I would like to see just one page where I have all the models like with the daily scores, and also maybe like this kind of submission score plots. If I can see all the models in one chart, probably. So
yeah, I'm with you. I think you could probably build something yourself.
Yeah,
but it'd be kind of cool to make them do it. Just saying.
That would be a nice feature to have, I think.
I'm a little surprised you didn't ask for some way to adjust stakes faster.
Actually, I'm quite fine with the current system, because I understand that's a limitation of that you actually bet 1 month upfront, so it cannot really be changed, I think. Actually, but if I can name one more feature,
by all means.
You actually mentioned in chat, I think yesterday, that it would be cool to place a stake for the aggregate of all models. And I think this is a good idea, because I try to have models. I submit models which fail in different eras. So I feel like they are like sufficiently different. And it would make actually sense to bet on the whole portfolio of your models than 2 single ones. So that idea really caught my attention. But it has to be like more thinking about it. But I like the idea.
Right. Yeah, I think I just kind of stole Fred's idea, OF_S. I don't think he's in. just kind of extended it a little bit and put it into different words. So I'm going to give him credit for the genesis of the idea, at least, and just kind of blended with what Richard was saying. But yeah, I think there's a lot of value there for the hedge fund and for us, because right now I don't have any incentive to stake on anything that isn't extremely performant in just correlation. And we know that tree-based models are very performant. And so why should I even bother with other modeling techniques if they're not going to post a very high correlation score? So yeah, I mean, some way of incentivizing that kind of diversification, I think, would be long-term beneficial, and make it a side bet, not like, you know, obviously we need to make sure it's Sybil resistant. And you've been around long enough, Quantverse, and you and I have talked over the years about this, about the botnets and everything else. So all these things need to be resistant to that too.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really good. So let's get on to some. Oh, do you have 10 models now? Forgot to ask that.
No, actually, I have 4 models which are staked now, and 4 models extra which are kind of experimental, and I like look how they evolve. But I still have like 2 slots for free, 2 free slots.
Well, I'm surprised that you haven't just submitted the example predictions then. Just plug those holes.
Probably, yeah, I could, maybe.
So here's some fun stuff to close out everything. If you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you say?
Hey, you stupid, buy Bitcoin.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to be a data scientist?
For those who are about to start,
somebody who wants to become a data scientist at whatever point in their career or life, what advice would you give them?
Okay. Probably I would tell them that they should like turn it to the game. They should like play with some data sets, maybe some competitions like Kaggle or maybe Numerai, and just to get their hands dirty to see like if they like it, and maybe also to, well, now it depends if we are talking about people who are more just general data science, or also like more like, for instance, deep learning and stuff with images and image recognition, because that's probably different motivation in those 2 groups. But I think just find some project which really you can take like a game, which you can just play with, and then you will naturally like it. And if you like it, you will be probably good in that.
So if you could step into my shoes, what would you ask yourself that I have not?
Probably like, what technologies do I use for my modeling or something like that. I don't know.
What technologies do you use for your modeling?
I used to, before Kazutsugi, I mostly used neural networks. But now I'm mostly into tree models.
I need to go to Slido questions because we're going to run out of time. Richard says, whoa to that too. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Mr. Pump, I like the handle. It might be a little bit of a troll, but we'll see. We'll see. Because I'm not sure what you're referring to. Because somebody called me a gym rat, and I'm wondering if that's who it was. So Mr. Pump is asking when doctor. And that could happen a lot faster if people like Quantverse didn't encourage me to make my own algorithmic trading models and then deploy them on the stock market. Because all these little fun side projects delay when doctor. Yeah, so when doctor, technically I should propose my dissertation in September. And then I have basically a year, about a year to finish. If I stay on time, I've already purposely decided to stay an extra year because the job market got severely impacted by COVID. Or I could do what Quantverse is doing, become Dr. Pump, and then just tinker. That'd be pretty cool because I can play golf and, just live in South Florida. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Any basic examples of Keras or TensorFlow for use with the data set? should we request or make a boilerplate for the tournament? So there's two ways I can answer that. One, I'll be happy to do it myself and put up a Google Colab notebook. Or two, you can build a Google Colab notebook and put it up in the example predictions folder.
Well, the issue is that, like, you know, I've been trying to, like, so I try like neural networks, like, you know, which I love at the very start of the tournament, and I didn't have like a very good result, but I was using like the sklearn neural networks, which are not very advanced, and so now I'm getting into like TensorFlow and Keras, and it's just like, you know, it's super more advanced because there's much more that you can do with the model. But I think, like, you know, from the data set, which is already like super clean, you know, you are going to get like more mileage out of, like, you know, I mean, it's going to be something like super weird that uses like many layers or like many feature crosses, or like that uses like weird activations and stuff like that. So, and at the same time, I've been having issues like just like getting started because the API is not very easy. So, I mean, I had like issues, but the thing that I want to mention is that there, at least what like the Google documentation, when you're learning it, they have all these kind of like neat extras. So for instance, like you have like these losses, this loss chart that like happens every time you run the model. So you have a very, very straightforward, like a beginner friendly way of like seeing how your model is performing. And they also have like a little widget that is sort of like a mini neural network. And so that one you can run it on your browser, and it's very cool because you can actually see what type of you know how your changes are like impacting your testing data set, your validation set, if it's converging or not, et cetera, et cetera. And so the idea that I had is like maybe we should make like a mini data set out of like the big data set that we have for Numerai. And that, but it's one of those things that, like, you know, I feel kind of like guilty if I do it for everybody because I'm not getting paid.
Yeah, that's why I think my tip idea should come into play here. Anybody who benefits from either example code or somebody throws out an idea and then you stake on it and you make money, the genesis of that idea came from somebody who helped you. And I think in polite society, of which we live, it would be nice to pay them back in some way. So I looked at the forum. I don't think there's a way to put a signature in your forum handle, but you can certainly put like your Ethereum address in your bio for your models. And like JRB gave me an idea that I've been tinkering on and I'm about ready to stake on it. And I fully intend on tipping him out if it pays out. And
Could I give a piece of unsolicited advice?
Certainly.
This is for Kino. If you're starting out, I would recommend avoiding Keras. There are things you can't do with Keras. Or maybe you can now, but you might want to just go directly with TF, or just go with JAX the way I'm doing it, or maybe PyTorch or whatever. So I think one of the limitations with Keras is, your loss function essentially can only take labels and predictions. So if you try to do anything non-trivial, you want your loss function to be a lot more flexible, right? Let's say you can
make your own loss function, right?
Of course, as long as it takes two things, and that's it, right? So essentially, it's very, very constrained. It's really good for the garden path where you want to try to build really simple models. But if you try to do anything non-trivial, it becomes really difficult. So if you're just starting out, I would rather invest the time in something different.
That's interesting feedback, Jeremy.
If you're already invested in Keras, maybe stick with it. But if you're starting out, I would recommend taking a look at something different. I mean, I think PyTorch is just
the issue is that, I mean, maybe for you it's very simple, but like I honestly been struggling this past week and a half just getting into Keras as like, it's just like making a pipeline. It's just like, the problems I've been issuing. I have no problems experimenting, but like just the pipeline has been like, hell. And so like, I mean, I don't know, the other ones might be better, but like, also the pipeline might be another thing to learn.
So what trouble are you having with the pipeline?
I'm going to interject because I got a bunch of questions I got to get to.
Oh, okay, okay.
I'll
we
let
will
you two
continue
talk
after
about that in the forums because I'm interested as well to how we can piece all this together. But again, so my answer to that question was twofold. Push it to GitHub, and then everybody just be mindful that tipping is the right thing if you make money on something that somebody shares, because there is no direct compensation route. And also Kino GitHub rolled out a sponsor program where you can be sponsored by people for open source projects. And guess what? The example predictions folder is open source. So it counts. I submitted my application based on just what I did for those example predictions, and I was accepted to that program. So I would encourage you to do the same thing. Who knows what this will look like in the future? I see it kind of like a Patreon kind of thing, right? Where you push open source code and you contribute, people can sponsor you. I don't know. Let's try it out. Let's see what happens. John has a question. Will it ever be possible for participants to see net exposure to country? I'm going to have to pass that one to the team. They're all looking at each other wondering who's going to answer it. So I'm going to take a shot and say that if we could find out our country exposure, then we could kind of overfit, because we could just submit something new and find out what thing was tagged to country exposure and then build some kind of model that was grossly overfit and punched way too high on the leaderboard and exposes us to an attack vector. And it goes back to my whole thing, like with how I don't really touch the data, and perhaps if I knew more about it, it would bias what's going on. Richard, I saw your square light up. Did you want to say something?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, countries do. If we give out a kind of category, you could have strange things like users who, you know, only trade in a country that's actually a little bit more expensive on average to trade for us. And so we'd have to almost have all the targets be like really post cost or something like that, which is something we've been looking at lately. So I think at some point there might be such a thing, but remember the Kazutsugi target is very neutral to all the things we kind of know. So you're not missing out on too much, because yeah, if you were to be really good only at one country or something like that, you'd still have to be good. The target's built over across all countries. So it's almost like fundamentally you're already training to build a model that's good at everything, and you're not going to get any extra points for being good just at one country or something like that. Some of this stuff has interaction effects with Numerai signals. So maybe we want to have, maybe you have someone who's made a model that's really good at one country. That's kind of something to put on Numerai signals.
Joe's got a question. Does flipping, and that's the 1 minus p part of the p 1 minus p strategy, does flipping a model with positive correlation and negative MMC work to get a model with positive MMC? And the second part is that allowed? I imagine a scenario where your submission is 75% long, 25% short, and you have positive core because you're long biased, and you should be, but you have negative MMC because you're not quite as performant. And you take the inverse of that. Now you're 75% short, 25% long. You've inverted your prediction set, right? And now you have really negative correlation, and you definitely have negative MMC. Now, is that universally true? No. But that's what I think would happen. Anybody else want to take that on? I think Michael Oliver's tinkered around with that whole P1 minus P deal. I know Bohr has as well, but I don't think he's in today.
My thinking is mostly theoretical for that post I wrote. But I think if you flip a model to P to 1 minus P, your model is also likely just to be worse overall. So it's probably not going to help.
Yeah.
You have to, for MMC, you have to be both good and different. And yeah, just being different isn't enough. Any
feedback on / feature request for the Numerati Dashboard? And there's a link there, and just create, and also a suggestion to create new issues on the GitHub. So I like this dashboard stuff, and I would encourage Kino and Joe, both of you, to put your wallet addresses on those pages and see what flows your way. Richard, while you're here, Can I ask you a couple of questions?
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know if you heard, but I've been going through and getting really deep into the model evaluation stuff because I'm trying to build out some tutorials and things for people. And in my work, I'm realizing that slowly you're introducing more and more targets for us to achieve, right? At first it was the Sharpe ratio, and then it was stationarity, and then it's feature neutralization. What is the best submission type for the meta model right now? Like what is that? What does that model look like?
Well, the meta model contribution is pretty close to what it looks like. So if you were to have like, so it's maybe the example predictions on the test set gets this correlation of something like 0.03 or something like that on the test set. And if you could make a model that had a correlation on the test set of 0.02 after we neutralized you by the meta model, like that would be insane, because it's basically saying you're finding a whole bunch of orthogonal alpha that is not captured by the example predictions. And if you can do that, then the only reason you're going to be able to do that is if you take on very different feature exposures to the average model. So yeah, that's getting good performance at sort of residual to the example predictions is a good measure. But there are other things too. And the more we work on the meta model, the more we learn about what we really want. And Michael Oliver a while ago sharing Smart Sharp on the leaderboard, on the forum, did kind of give us a new way of looking at things, and like autocorrelation did start to seem like the kind of thing we should be minimizing. A lot of these things are very related. If you have very good Sharp, you tend to have very good Smart Sharp and stuff, but
Right.
some of them are kind of subtle. And yeah, so we are developing more, but right now it's still extremely good to get very high mean returns. Mean correlation on Kazutsugi is also just very good because the target's very good.
It seems like all of us are achieving that, and so like when I look at the metrics and I try to hypothetically ask myself the question, well, okay, fine, so I can get my correlation, but so what? Like that's fairly easy given how good the example predictions are. How can I not only maximize my performance, but make it better overall? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and we can't see the test set. You can see how we do in the test set, but you don't give us that feedback. So we're completely blind to it. So if I submitted something that did have a 2% neutralized alpha, let's say, like you said, I wouldn't even know that. And maybe I would submit such a model and then next week change it because it had too low of a correlation relative to the average.
Well, you would know on your validation set if you weren't cheating on it. And not that you are, but I'm just saying if you don't, then you can see. But yeah, what Mike P and I want to do is add a lot more detail to like on upload, what do you see about your model? Because we have found like once we started showing Sharp, as soon as you upload the validation Sharp, people started caring about it a bit more and models improved. And having validation 2 also made things improve, but we can do a little bit better. And the way we define feature exposure actually on the website is also not quite how we think about it anymore. So there's a couple things we can do, but I think you're going to like those. They'll probably do those in July, a few upgrades to what to think about. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously I'll post some of these in the fireside chat Slido when it opens, and I don't mean to spoil whatever you have for fireside. So certainly just mute my mic if I'm getting too close to anything. But you said that the Sharp is meaningful for the validation. I'm just throwing this out because I don't know, but like if the example predictions gave a validation 1 and 2 Sharp combined of say 1.05, let's just say that's what it is, and I submit one with 1.07, then is that what you're looking for? You want somebody to have a Sharp that's higher than the example predictions.
I just actually posted something and some people are talking about it, which is sort of a different definition of Sharp, which just subtracts off some correlation almost as a proxy for the trading costs. So we found that if people are submitting a model, you might have a very high Sharp model that is only getting about a 0.01 correlation on the test set or something. We don't want that model because that model actually doesn't pay for itself too much. So that's another kind of take on what kind of Sharp to maximize. Also, if you're familiar with Sharps, you also might want to like multiply that whole thing by square root of 12 to actually get a number that is similar to what a normal, what an actual Sharp on the back test would be. It's all pretty sketchy because it's like turning correlations into back tests and making a lot of guesses. But like some guy just posted on the RocketChat that he has a 0.78 Sharp. So if I calculate that, it's like a 2.72 Sharp. That's sort of if you want to think about what the Sharp of your actual model is on a real. So your Sharps are higher than they seem. If you think you can turn your Sharps into you can't, if you want to translate them into Sharps that you might expect on an actual back test, they're all quite a lot higher than you might be thinking. Yeah. But maybe you knew that already. Actually, I have a question for you. So,
Whoa.
Do you think, man, this is a bit strange because if you train on the example predictions, obviously, if you train on the validation data, it really messes with your validation score.
It does.
But do you think it would be useful to show other people's validation scores to everybody? Or is that like a leak?
No, it is, because I could immediately identify who is actually training on validation or not, right?
Yeah.
And also I could get a feel for like, I'm clustered around this person, but their validation Sharp is higher than mine or lower than mine. Why? Right? Maybe it's different feature sets. Maybe, that's interesting. So anything that makes me question my performance relative to another person, I think is meaningful, because it may help me to either generate a new hypothesis for performance or to maybe not change my model, right?
Yeah, like you could also, if you see a model like Madmen or something, this is a model you guys don't really like respect that much.
It's true.
Because you kind of know it's sort of like taking on excessive, it's sort of like very volatile and stuff. But if we showed you, its feature exposure, we could show that to everybody. Then you would know, oh, okay, yeah, the only reason it's doing well is because it's got a lot of feature exposure. I'm not gonna even try to like copy what it's doing because it's clearly only high on the leaderboard because of feature exposure. So there could be things like that we could share. And feature exposure would be quite a good one because feature exposure, even if you train on the validation set, it's still going to be a reliable thing to look at. Yeah,
it is still meaningful. When in my own evaluation, I do not add the validation data until I've verified that the modeling technique is sound on the validation data as out of sample. Once I'm satisfied with that, and I'm pretty sure I'm not going to overfit, then I'll add the additional data, let it run, pickle it, throw it in joblib, and put it on compute and let it run for a while. And I'll collect a few weeks of data. And I told John last week, I said, if you have a main model that you're staking on and it's performant, you're very unlikely to make such a tragic mistake that whatever other model you develop is going to be very bad. And that's why I feel comfortable testing it on the live performance. Because like you said, if you do have the validation data in your training set, there's not a whole lot you can do to evaluate it except to submit. I wish you all a good week. See you in RocketChat.